my book's not like anybody else's. It's a real backstory. My book is Lucky, the autobiography of a goldfish. Now, one must think that's a pretty funny title for a book. How did you get the goldfish to tell you it's an autobiography? Well, to be perfectly honest, that's the one part of the story that isn't true. Lucky is really a true story. I ran across Lucky because I volunteered in the elementary school in Harwich as a tutor. And one morning, I walked into school and I walked upstairs to the room where I was about to tutor. And in the hall was the teacher, and she's got an aquarium, a small aquarium in her hand, really bad looking goldfish. And I said, man, that has to be the sickest looking goldfish I have ever seen. She says, if you'd been through what this fish had been through, you'd look pretty sick too. I recount that story as the introduction to the book because it's really true. So she made me stop, and I went with her. We set up the fish tank in the room for the first time, and the kids started to come in. Well, this teacher was a wonderful teacher. She's since retired, but she had all kinds of pets in the classroom, including a cockroach, and some little hermit crabs and all sorts of things. So the kids start arriving, and one kid yells, "We have a new pet in our classroom." And indeed they did. It was Lucky. Now Lucky had a rather interesting life. The backstory is, and which is all explained in the book, and that some kind person had a koi pond, I guess, and they decided that the school needed some fish. So they installed a little, like a kid's pool, kind of strange, kidney-shaped one, I guess you'd say, in the backyard of the school. Both Harwich Elementary and Harwich Middle School are built around an atrium, so it's kind of closed-in area. So it's a great place to have things like that. Some of the teachers use they call it the garden, and some of the teachers actually plant flowers and stuff out there. There's even a pear tree out there. But this year they had a goldfish pond. So the fish were put in the pond, and every day the kids would come out and throw some food in or whatever. It was quite an attraction. Well, along came probably around November, and the person who had donated the fish became a little concerned that it would probably freeze in the winter, and therefore the fish would more than likely die because it was only about this deep. So they came in and they scooped out all of the fish. The only problem was they missed one. And that turns out to be Lucky. So what happened was, around February, by the way, the fish all went to a good home in a nursing home, actually, but not Lucky. So in February or so, they had, you know how we sometimes have absolutely gorgeous days in February. It was a beautiful warm day, so the maintenance department decided, let's clean out the pond. So they went out, they set up a hose in the pond, and they started to take the water out. They're pumping it out because they've got a siphon going. They pump out the pond. While they're in the process, of course, they're standing there drinking coffee. What else do they do? And while they're standing there watching, plop, out of the hose comes goldfish. So panic sets in. They dump out their coffee, fill the coffee cup with water, pick up the fish and throw it in that cup, and then they run into the school. What are they going to do with it? And so they found the one room in the school that happened to have a working aquarium, happened to also have about 5 or 6 crayfish in it. Not good news to some fish, because, well, it turns out, we found out later, The fish only, dead fish are eaten by crayfish, but not live ones. But of course, Lucky doesn't know this because he's just a young fish and his parents have disappeared. So the fish spent the weekend in that fish tank and then ended up in the one in the classroom that actually ended up adopting the fish. The great thing about this book, which tells the whole story basically the way I've sort of outlined it, the wonderful thing about it is that I figured if I would, the reason I went home and wrote the story, the teacher made me stay and listen to the story as she told us about what happened to the fish. The kids were sitting there and their eyes were popping out of their head. They were all so excited that I decided I'd go home and write this story, rewrite the story, and I chose to write it in the first person. That's the word, autobiography. And so it's told as if the fish had told the story. I decided I wanted the kids to illustrate the book. I thought about it, and at first I thought, my gosh, if they do that, they're all going to draw the same picture. And it would probably look something like this, because it's a story about a fish, so what else do kids do? So what I did was I asked the teacher if we could give each kid one page to illustrate, which is what I did. And I'm telling you, the kids did a smashing job of illustrating this book. It's really wonderful. You need to stop by afterwards. I thought about passing this around, but that would detract from whoever else was going to talk. So I won't do that. And I picked one short page to read from the book. This talks about enduring the winter, because what happens to fish, and fish are cold-blooded animals, and as the water got colder, the fish became less and less mobile because their temperature goes down, as the water temperature, much the same as an alligator or a crocodile, a lot of snakes. And so we've got this poor little fish that's having a little bit of trouble swimming around. So as the seasons changed, I became even more upset. It was getting quite cold in that pond. I stayed close to the bottom where the water was a little bit warmer, but I was very lonely. There was no one for me to talk with. And I missed playing hide and seek with all of my cousins. I couldn't understand why it was so hard for me to swim. My muscles just would not work as well as they did earlier in the year. It seemed that all of my energy was being used just trying to stay warm. And at that point in the book, I explained cold-blooded briefly, so kids reading it will understand. I could not stop wondering and worrying about where the rest of my family had gone. I wished my parents were with me to explain everything that was happening. I wasn't feeling so lucky anymore. And that line, and every page has a line at the bottom that has the word either lucky or not so lucky or unlucky on it. And the reason for that is because it's written for early readers. And it's a book that actually can be read to children, very small children, and they will pay attention. I can keep a whole class of kindergarten kids listening for the whole story, which takes almost a half an hour to read because I do ask them questions as I go along. And kids are very interested in it. And oftentimes I end up with new pictures because kids will sit down afterwards and draw me a picture of what they think happened. So that's about my story. Lucky is for sale tonight, along with a couple of other books over here. And it's $15. And it's a great read for kids. I have a neighbor who actually buys it as a baby shower gift, because a lot of people start reading to their children when they're very, very young, and some even before they're born. And for reading level, it's written on what used to be second grade level, which is probably now the end of first grade because they start teaching reading at a much younger age than they did even 5 or 6 years ago. And I joined the writers group because there was a sign up in front of the library. I had written the book and I didn't know what to do with it. And I had decided that if I waited for a publisher that was well known to publish it, I would be dead. So, because nobody knew who I was, and it could be the greatest story you'd ever written, and they don't know who I am, and I was already in my late 60s. Yeah, I think I was in my 70s. But anyway, so I stopped in at the writers group and didn't know what to do, and so I read it to them, and they were all adults, and they liked it too. And they said, you gotta get it published, and so it's been published. It's self-published. If you have any questions about it, you can ask me later.